way that we do business today is changing pretty fundamentally thanks to AI, and I don't think a lot of people have fully caught up to that yet. So in this video, I want to cover 8 major trends that are impacting things like market dynamics, things like the value of product over distribution, as well as a few others. The idea being, if you learn these 8 AI trends, you'll be positioned a lot better to build a successful business over the course of the next 5 or 10 years. Okay, so what's the major first trend I want to talk about? Well, it's basically the fact that distribution is now more important than product. Distribution, for people that don't know, is basically the number of people you could sell to. Okay? Product is obviously the thing that you sell. So in the past, the thing that you sold was obviously the most important thing. You would spend hours of arduous labor, maybe building some physical product, some hardware product, or some software product. And then only after you built the thing would you try and find people to buy it. But nowadays, it's actually the exact opposite. What you do is you first find an audience of people that might want to buy your product, and then you spend the time and energy creating your product. So if I could just make a long story short, and I'll cover why all of this stuff is happening. If this is the value of, let's say, product over here, and then this is distribution, and then this is time, over the course of the last, I want to say 50, 100 years, the value of your product has plummeted. AI now makes it very easy to get up and running and started with basically any product, regardless of how complicated it is. The value of distribution has since spiked. And I make an argument that we are basically right over here right now. Okay, this is us. So we're far beyond the point where product is more important than distribution. We're very much into distribution territory. And what this means in practice is if you're developing a product or a service or course or a community or whatever it is that you are attempting to sell, instead of focusing on building the thing, what you should first do is focus on acquiring a list of people who might actually want to buy it. Okay. So if you're going to spend 100 hours building a product, then you spend at least 100 to 150 hours marketing that product. Artificial intelligence has made this really easy. Nowadays you could basically pump in, hey, make me a Netflix clone. And one of these apps, so Firebase or Bolt or Lovable, they actually do a pretty good job. These apps, most of us now know and are familiar with, these have really only been around for the better part of the last 6 or 12 months. These have actually only been here for a very short period of time. If you zoom out and you look at the trend, pretty soon these apps will be able to create more or less anything of any sufficient level of complexity. They'll be able to create themselves pretty soon, right? Create me a Lovable or a Bolt.dev clone, and then it's just like a recursive loop. So we're really moving towards this the ChatGPT interface. It's like this unibox, right? Where there's just one kind of thing right over here. And it's like, hey, what do you want to do? You'll be able to make more or less anything. Think about where that leads us to. That leads us to more or less everything being a commodity and there being very little moat in the actual product. So instead, attention and distribution channels are the primary competitive advantage. And if you have good distribution, it'll beat the best product every time. Okay. I had AI generate this image, which is a good example of product over distribution. This image might have taken, who knows, a good artist, an hour or something like that to draw just a few years ago. Nowadays, you could have a very similar quality, quote unquote, product in just a few seconds. But let's say, this is business A, and business A spends all their time on this beautiful, amazing product over here. Then they spend 0 time marketing. Business B creates a pretty crappy product to start with. I don't know, it just doesn't look as cool. But then they focus most of their time and effort on marketing it. Okay. Well, business B is going to win versus business A every time. And the reason why is because they're going to make some quick and easy money at the beginning, front loading their product, even though their product isn't as good quality as yours, and maybe you charge more money for it or whatever, they're going to make easy money. And once they have that money, okay, well then what they can do is they could just take that money and invest it back in the product. So even if the objective quality of their product was way worse than product A over here, very quickly they get to produce multiples. They get to reinvest back in the quality of their product, and then they end up having both better product and better distribution. So distribution is really the key. That's where we need to focus on now and then moving forward. And if you're not already focusing on distribution, highly recommend that you guys do. Variety of ways to do so, obviously. I typically champion cold outbound methods for products. Before you actually build the product or build a service or whatnot, you actually validate it. So if you're starting an AI automation agency, for instance, you create a bunch of example offers, you pitch 10,000 people with 3 of these, and then you just determine of the 3,000 people that I messaged with product A, another 3,000 with B, and another 3,000 with C, which one had the best results? Then you just let the leads guide you, let the market demand itself push you in the direction of how you should develop your product. So that's number 1. Number 2 is, I'm talking about moat. Well, if you think about it, basically everything on planet Earth right now is set up to consume as much of our attention as humanly possible. So we have obviously social media platforms, but then we also have the added interconnectivity of just life in general. Everybody's carrying around essentially a freaking mega distraction machine in their pockets all day. We usually have mega distraction machines literally glued to our ears all day. We have so many opportunities for distraction that it's insane, not even counting for the technology that we're using. And the proportion of time that people just spend alone, not under the influence of another brain, essentially. Most people spend 5 minutes a day alone. And, if we do, our hearts start pounding, we start getting really anxious. The lack of stimulation does really weird things to most people. So my argument is that focus and discipline are the ultimate moat in today's generation and beyond. And the reason why is the value of knowledge itself is also going down. because we have tools that are capable of teaching us more or less anything as quickly as we want to. And we also have more or less all of the knowledge that we could ever possibly want at our fingertips at any given point. So if you think about this, this is almost like distribution versus product, just sort of zoomed out a little bit. The value of knowledge itself has gone down. But you know what hasn't gone down? Our ability to learn that knowledge. In fact, I'd say that skill now is much more valuable than actually knowing the stuff. So there are a bunch of different ways you can frame this. In psychology, they talk a lot about crystallized intelligence versus fluid intelligence. Crystallized intelligence is sort of like, the thing that you all of the knowledge in the various niches. This is supposed to be a crystal. It's not a very good crystal. All of the knowledge of the various niches and all of the facts that you've learned over the course of your lifetime. And you contrast that with fluid intelligence, which is basically just your ability to learn. It's almost like your fluid IQ, how quickly you can pick up concepts, okay? And nowadays, this fluid intelligence, I'm saying, is much more important than the crystallized intelligence. It matters way less what you know. It matters how quickly you can learn. And the only way that you learn stuff quickly is with focus and discipline, meaning that these are now the ultimate moat. Your ability to pick things up in a short period of time is the ultimate moat. So, as the AI tools and these capabilities are going to continue to proliferate, we're going to have more opportunities for distraction than ever. The total fraction of the day that we will have available to actually sit down and focus on something is just going to continue decreasing until we're down to seconds. So success requires sticking with one approach long enough to perfect it, believe it or not, whether you're learning something or executing on something. If you can just get in the habit of setting aside a couple of hours a day, even just an hour a day of focused work, your relative competitive advantage to everybody else just skyrockets, and it's insane. Okay, so instead of switching paths and being distracted by shiny objects and constantly chasing the next big thing, your ability to just sit down and attack a specific topic, believe it or not, is actually the most important thing nowadays. And also, nowadays we're in like a culture where we just say yes to everything. The ability to say no to new opportunities is, I think, another really big and understated skill. If you can get in the habit of actually being confident and capable, saying no to the myriad things that come your way. Hey, use this shiny new tool. Hey, let's go over here. Hey, let's talk about this. Hey, let's go to this conference, whatever. Your ability to make a ton of money relative to everybody else in your niche just skyrockets. I see this myself, starting to be invited to various events and whatnot, but I just look at the value of that over time. And basically what I'm seeing is that like the value of knowledge has gone down, and then the value of focus, your ability to learn new things, has since gone up. Okay. So I'm going to be doing a lot of these graph sort of style drawings over the course of the next little bit, but hopefully you guys could see that product has gone down, distribution has gone up, knowledge is going down, focus is going up, and there are a bunch more of these trends that I think are converging on a pretty interesting phenomenon. Okay, here's another big trend that I'm seeing, and it's that outcome ownership. Your ability to own an outcome trumps the ability to own technical skills. Again, because the value of knowledge and skills are going down. What business owners care more about is not actually your knowledge of, let's say, how to program something, or your knowledge on how to create a script or create an app, or implement some artificial intelligence stuff in a person's business. What they care about is your ability to own the downstream outcome of that, the money, the number of users, the growth. So if we contrast, person A with person B over here, person A is focused all on the spreadsheets and the technicals, okay? Person B is just focused on the money. Well, it's person B that's going to win when they pitch a business, because all businesses are going to care about moving forward is not the ability to technically implement something, because obviously the value of knowledge and stuff like that is going down, as we discussed. What they care about is the ability to actually drive some sort of revenue outcome. So people care about results. They don't care about the fancy technology. And as technology gets fancier and fancier and fancier, the value of results is just going to go up as a result. If you can position yourself as the owner of a business outcome and not like a technology provider, because this is being commoditized, you increase your comparative value a lot. Anytime that I'm talking with businesses nowadays, I focus on return on investment language rather than some sort of technical spec. I focus on how much money their investment in me is going to make them. And I focus on basically making it a black box. If I'm offering a service like an AI automation project or something like that, I don't actually talk about the project itself. I basically just say, hey, we can implement XYZ in your business. We can make you all of this money. People care a lot less about what the XYZ part is, and they're comfortable just treating it as, this is my little black cube over here. They're comfortable treating it as like, hey, I put in $1, then I make $3, because anything else would just be overwhelming for the business person. There's just so much technology everywhere that, it just doesn't make sense. These are supposed to be clouds, and I'm not doing a very good job of it. The fourth big shift is that niche definition, your ability to pick and choose a niche, becomes a competitive advantage in today's generation. The point I'm making here is essentially that since distribution is much more important than product, everybody will quickly flood distribution channels. And so it's not sufficient for you just to be a website developer anymore. It's not sufficient for you to be a social media marketing agency anymore. It's not sufficient for you to be an AI automation agency anymore. These markets are growing incredibly sophisticated, and AI can replicate most things relatively quickly. So if you don't niche way the hell down, your distribution will have basically no effect either. What I mean by this is instead of being a social media marketing agency, be like a Facebook PPC agency for dog walkers or something, okay? Find the confluence of 3 or 4 different approaches or niches or takes, and then focus on that in your distribution. The reason why is because customers will, one, pay premium for solutions tailored to their specific niche because the perceived value of the product or the service that you are creating is a lot higher. You'll also, essentially hyper-specializing will let you target significantly deeper, and the likelihood is you'll have a much higher conversion rate than if you just leave it up to some generalist AI stuff. And also, most people just know enough these days about basic services and basic products that they could just replicate it themselves because they have access to basically like a freaking galaxy-sized brain at the click of a button. So if you don't have some sort of comparative advantage relative to the 1 million other people in the AI automation agency niche, and 2, relative to like the actual AI tools themselves, your business will have no competitive advantage. And so this is a distribution tactic, but basically define your niches, okay? Have a couple of niches. Don't do everything for everybody because as Hormozy and a couple of other people always repeat, then you'll do nothing for nobody. And by the way, a quick little hack here, you don't actually just need to like put all of your eggs in one basket. If this is your basket, okay, wonderfully drawn basket, I might add, don't put all of your eggs in there. I mean, this is Easter, so we're talking eggs, right? Instead, build a couple of baskets, test out each of those baskets. After you've identified the highest performing basket, only then do you actually put your eggs in there. Nowadays, because you can replicate most approaches pretty easily with AI, you can choose, X niches for way less than X times the work. What I mean by this is, let's say you have all of your eggs in one basket as sort of like your first option. Okay, that would take 1x the work for 1x the niche. Well, nowadays, what you can actually do is you could do 3 times the niches. So you could pick 3 niches or something, and then it'd only take you like 1.5x the work because you can learn a bunch of stuff about a specific niche. And then you could have, well, first of all, artificial intelligence could just very quickly and easily find analogs and things like that in other niches. But you can do a lot of work for one niche. And then you find that a lot of businesses suffer from pretty similar problems. And you can just like copy and paste the approaches you did for business A to business B. I guess the point I'm making is you can get away with like 50% more work for 300% more results. This is something that I see a lot of people do in Maker School, and it's something that I pitch pretty heavily. And then what you do is you just have the results of the business drive you. So if niche 2 ends up delivering superior results versus niche 1 and 3, well, then you actually have some data backing you, and then you kind of go all in on niche 2, if that makes sense. 5th major point is this notion of the idea guy. Okay, and how idea guys are actually going to win in the future. So back in the day, the whole adage was ideas are worthless without the ability to execute on them, right? But if you think about it, the bar for everything has plummeted. So it's way easier to do everything now compared to just a few years ago. And so, the ability to execute stops being a major competitive advantage. And instead, it's just your ability to move quickly and then come up with an idea and then basically be the first person to a market. So yeah, speed to market, as I mentioned with distribution, it's way more important nowadays than the actual ability to execute. I mentioned earlier AI art, right? Well, AI art's a really good example of this. In order to generate this picture now, you don't need to be like a good comic style creator. What you need to do is you need to be able to come up with an idea of, hey, I want a guy propelled by a rocket that says idea over a football field with a sign that says innovate faster with a bunch of people running after him, right? That ability to come up with that idea ends up being more important. And your ability to do that quickly ends up being more important because there are these gaps in the market that are going to open up and then be filled very fast. So unless you could sweep up the lion's share of the distribution, you'll sort of be left behind. So as opposed to business being about execution before, it's really just about your ability to come up with an idea, as opposed to, winning in business being about knowledge, right? It's about your ability to learn a field really quickly. As opposed to being about product, it's your ability to get it in front of as many people as humanly possible. And this is just another trend that is similar to the other ones that I've mentioned. That's just all about getting up and running as quickly as humanly possible. And then once you're up and running, then you can like reinvest stuff, right? But it's just about getting up and running. The whole like iterate, the whole like MVP approach is more or less what I'm getting at. So you can do so with a ton of these apps, right? Like Firebase, Bolt, Lovable, Make.com, N8N, right? Various social media approaches that you could validate quickly and pretty effectively. Your ability to just come up with ideas and then take them to market first is what will ultimately set you apart because Kind of on a related note, this idea of feedback over planning. The people that spend all day planning and coming up with super long, flow charts of various things that they could do and how they're going to execute on X, Y, and Z, that stuff's less important than just coming up with an idea, launching it, and then getting a bunch of feedback. So this is basically like how you do business in 2025 and beyond. First championed by Amazon. Well, not first, but majorly championed by Amazon in the last couple of decades. Feedback is the main mechanism by which you should be hitting market, not necessarily planning. Okay, another really big point I want to touch on is this notion of human touch at critical points. So obviously, what is going to happen over the course of the next 5, 10, 15 years? Well, we're already seeing AI make serious inroads into voice agents. We see it making serious inroads into handling and processing customer information, serious inroads into things like music and song and dance and whatnot. So because of this, okay, the comparative value of your skill and your ability to do all of this stuff goes way down because it's all synthetic, it's all artificial. Right? People want to talk to people. And so even if an AI model is capable of replicating a person, when everybody else realizes that that's an AI model and not a person, the comparative value of this goes way down. And so the businesses that are going to crush it in the future are ones that are going to weave in human touch into these mostly automated processes at very critical points. They're going to weave in a human sales agent at the moment just before you buy. They're going to have some sort of physical in-person event that you cannot replicate thanks to artificial intelligence. They're ultimately going to have key customer decision points, key inflection points, key transformation points or activation points, whatever concept you want to use for them, be human as opposed to just artificial intelligence. These ideas of hybrid models, I think, are really going to champion the successful businesses of the future. And they're also going to allow you to charge much higher ticket because you have that human touch. I guess you can kind of think of it as, artisanal sort of work. If you think about it, we have the means to make really high quality plates and bowls nowadays, but people still buy artisanal plates and artisanal bowls that cost them 10 times or 20 times the amount, simply for the sole reason that they know that human hands went into the shaping of this thing. Okay. So if you extrapolate that idea into the future where AI is now no longer or robots are not just creating bowls and automating manufacturing processes, but are actually controlling most of the knowledge and the services economy as well, you'll see a similar effect. You'll see people consciously choosing to want to work with human beings, even if it's slower or even if there's more of a cost. And so companies that can find ways to weave in human touch at critical points without necessarily compromising the quality of the service that much are ones that are going to win. And this is going to significantly buy you longevity as well. Because again, once everything is fully automated and AI, then more or less everything becomes a commodity. If you could have some parts of that be human or some parts of that be anchored in the real world, essentially, you'll have a lot more runway with your business compared to most other ones that are automatable. So the key is build systems that augment people, not replace them. And this is going to be doubly true for the service industry. I think that a lot of, digital products and whatnot are going to be more or less fully automatable. But I think services that involve some sort of human touch that are augmented are the ones that are really going to be making a lot of money over the course of the next few years. So yeah, here's a little flow chart with the customer journey. If everything is automated and if the customer knows everything is automated and you save a bunch of money or whatnot, that's a pretty low value interaction. But if there's a bit of perceived human touch, if there's trust and loyalty, you can get by with premium pricing and then you can crush it. Okay, another big thing I want to talk about is this idea of hitting 70% as opposed to 100%. So in the past, you needed a ton of certainty in order to do anything. The capital cost of starting a business is pretty high. So you need to be pretty certain that that business is going to succeed before you spent all of that time, money, and energy in buying the heavy machinery or investing in the software developer to create your product or that sort of stuff, right? Hence why you typically needed to do a bunch of market research. You needed to do a bunch of planning. You need to do a bunch of stuff, super nuanced and deep dive that solves exactly a specific customer segment, and you needed validation for that. Well, nowadays, obviously, with the barrier to entry being so low, you don't actually need that. So it's simple 70% solutions that be complex 100% ones, because you get up and running with the bootstrap 70% solution, and then you very quickly just reinvest that into your solution over and over and over again until it ends up being better than that complex one that you had earlier. Okay, this is very related to my previous point about idea guys, but people that can get 70% of the way there are beating people that get 100% of the way there all over the world right now. And that's only going to continue to happen. So basically focus on a couple of points, speed and usability. So as long as you can get to market really quickly and then somebody can just use it really fast and it's not like a totally trash kind of customer experience, your ability to succeed just skyrockets. Your probability of success skyrockets. The opportunity cost of waiting is going way the hell up because now there are way more market entrants. So before, if you just spent an additional month fine-tuning your product, you might have actually been able to get away with that. Nowadays, if you spend an additional month fine-tuning your product or service, between you now and then you a month later, there's going to be a million more entrants into the market. It's going to be very difficult for you to make any progress. And then, simple solutions create faster adoption, less user resistance. This is related to that earlier point I was making about black box products and black box services, where all you're really doing is just saying, hey, a B2B environment anyway, you give me X dollars and I'll make you 5X dollars. That's the only real thing that matters and that you care about. And then what's really interesting is that good products or okay products that actually ship always outperform perfect products that don't. I think simple products are easier to explain, sell, and support. So I focus on those. And then, you get iterative improvement with that market feedback. So basically you launch, your MVP. And, MVP is a term that I think we're all familiar with now, but now we're talking really, 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 really bare bones MVP. Okay. You then get a bunch of feedback and then you use that to improve. And then you relaunch the MVP or you make some iteration or some change to it. And then you basically just do this over and over and over and over again. That's what ultimately results in this exponential graph that I think we all want in our businesses. If you try and just one-shot everything from start to finish, the likelihood that you'll actually be able to do this with a very complex system or whatever just goes way down. So focus on these iterative progressive improvements, I guess, as opposed to the big ones. Okay, and the last point I'm going to make is that long form content is going to win in the next few years. Now, it's funny because I AI generated this image and it said AI geniated content, human created content instead of generated and created. And actually I didn't do this on purpose, but when it was generated, I allowed this to happen because I found it pretty funny. The idea is basically there's going to be a massive explosion in short form content over the course of the next little bit. So if you're talking distribution channels, the distribution channels that win are extraordinarily long form. And they're also things with a human touch, okay? Because the ability of models to create long form content and the ability of models to sustain a certain human presence or character over time is going to take a lot longer to solve that. But, you can imagine a bajillion Instagram reels being created by artificial intelligence over just the course of the next year. And so in a market that is going to be filled with synthetic stuff, human created content will quickly be outpaced and outshadowed. And the only way to kind of prevent that or I guess push against that or give yourself as long as possible to actually do well on one of these distribution channels is to make everything really long form. This is what I've been doing over the course of the last year or so, maybe year and a half now. The main thing I've been talking about, obviously I'm just yapping into a screen, but consider the ability of artificial intelligence to replicate all of this. It's probably not going to happen for at least the next few years, right? I mean, I am whiteboarding stuff. I'm interacting with 3 or 4 different formats here, moving the screen around slightly. I guess the point that I'm making is it's a lot more authentic of an experience, and authenticity over the course of the next few years is going to be at a premium. The best way to buy that is with long form. So yeah, we're going to have a flood, okay? If right now, let's say out of 100 posts, 90 posts are human, and then 10 posts are fully AI or synthetic. In the future, it's going to be 0.001 post and then 99.999 synthetic. Okay. So synthetic is just going to be insane. It's not even going to be close. The human content will just plummet. And so the only real way to, I guess, stand out will be long form. It'll be I've seen the quadrillionth AI reel today. It's I want to talk to a person. I want to see what actual people are doing with this technology. I want to see what actual people are like. Obviously, this is related to that idea I was mentioning earlier about why do people still buy artisanal bowls on Etsy and whatnot? It's because they're human created and people ascribe some sort of value to the humanity of a process. But yeah, I guess a major point that I'm making is that pre-AI creators like me and creators like people over the course of the last years are going to have an inherent advantage over post-AI creators just because we'll have all of this content and it'll be super long form and authentic. And then depth and expertise will be key differentiators for personal brands. But I think more important than both depth and expertise, honestly, is probably just the character. People will be drawn to the character. And you can only really get that with long form. So yeah, authenticity is at a premium. I think before, especially over the last few years, the sort of short form content blew up. It's 1 million cuts and stuff like that. And, people did that because they cared a lot more about just capturing as much attention as possible. And creating super flashy, sexy content is it activates your limbic system basically, and it's fun and it's enjoyable and people like watching that. And there was this big flood of people that were into that. But I think now, just given how much more reproducible it is, the thing that people really care about, more so than just optimizing every second of their time, is just the authenticity and their ability to connect with people. It's oh, that's a real human being. That's not some robot or whatnot. So yeah, more or less, those are the 8 trends in a nutshell. I know I covered a variety of topics here. I wanted to start really broad with that distribution of a product, and then I wanted to kind of go across a variety of niches and a variety of topics and concepts. My goal is not to give you guys a 0 to 1 roadmap with this video. I just wanted to alert you as to a bunch of trends that I think people are currently taking advantage of and making a bunch of money using. So hopefully you guys can arm yourself for that next wave of business as we enter the AI era. If you guys like this sort of stuff, I do a lot of strategic and tactical work in Maker School. It's my 0 to 1 community to get you your very first automation agency client in 90 days, fully guaranteed, or I refund you the cost of the program. Otherwise, please check out Make Money with Make. Comment, subscribe, do all that fun YouTube stuff. And I'll catch you on the next video. Thanks so much.